All right, so we're back. Now we're on to season 1, episode 2, which is the Big Bran Hypothesis. And you may notice all of the episode titles are some like nerdy reference, something scientific, but a parody of that to do with the episode. It's always fun to read what the titles are. So this is the discussion for episode 2, and we're going to talk about how, once again, Sheldon and company reflect what I've seen in the world and how I feel about the episode. So starts with another joke about the nerds being allergic to peanuts with Wolowitz. This one, I don't think has aged very well because there seems to be a lot of allergy warnings everywhere for many things because people seem to be allergic to a lot of things nowadays. It's not just a nerd thing. That is coming from maybe the 80s, 90s thinking where, oh yeah, those nerds, they're allergic to everything. But I think nowadays we're realizing more people are allergic to things because of all the crap we put in our food. So it's not something that's as funny as it may have been, but that was when they're picking on people. We don't do that as much anymore. So then we talked about spewing unneeded facts, something a lot of neurodivergent people do, myself included at times, I will admit. And Sheldon does it at the beginning. Now, if you're one of those people that enjoys facts, every time he does this, it's great. You get it. That's what you do. A lot of your family, a lot of your friends may be rolling their eyes at that same point. But even if his friends have gotten tired of it, that they're still his friends. That's something I want to point out, that they still put up with him throughout the series. And that's something that'll come up over and over again. So this type of thing does come up often, and deep down, they do get him, even with this annoyance. And at the beginning, some of the same jokes come up about their personalities, and it comes on very strong.
I don't have any other plans. Do you want to join us for Thai food and a Superman movie marathon?
A marathon? Wow, how many Superman movies are there?
You're kidding, right?
So this time, Sheldon is wearing a Superman shirt because they are having a Superman movie marathon. So, of course, that's what he had to wear. It makes sense. You'll see that a lot, too. If we're going to do a Superman marathon, I got to wear Superman. It makes sense. Leonard, sorry, I lost my place. Leonard is wearing the molecular structure of caffeine on his shirt. It's another nerdy thing, but I think that also has become a little more popular, a little more commonplace. Wearing molecular formulas for caffeine or similar things is quite common nowadays. I've seen it in the wild. I do think Big Bang had something to do with it. And then for those of you watching, Howard's belt buckle is Batman. And then later on the episode, he wears a Green Lantern belt buckle. And I think he has the Nintendo one on again in there somewhere. And the Green Lantern, that's my son's favorite. So call out to that. So then Penny asks them, how many Superman movies are there? And Sheldon is just, what? He can't believe that she doesn't know this. Because to him, this is a common fact that everybody should know. Again, I refer back to our common sense mention. When you got that type of brain that thinks differently, some things for common sense just don't make sense. Even though everyone else, what is your problem? Everybody knows that. To Sheldon, knowing how many Superman movies there are and probably who the Superman actors are and when they came out, these are just common knowledge, common facts that everybody knows, right? Not everybody knows it. So it's that showing that sense of what is normal. To Sheldon, this is completely normal. To Penny, it is not normal. But does that make Penny right? And that's the point of what I'm doing here. Here we go. After this, we've got some scientific inaccuracies of the movie, and they discuss it. So I have been in on these discussions many times about the inaccuracies or the scientific principles applied to the movie and the superheroes and et cetera, et cetera. All I got to say is they're fun exercises for different opinions and talking through it. It's a fun thing to do. It's no different than a bunch of guys sitting around talking about if such and such player went to such and such a team and how that would change it. And do you think this quarterback's going to perform like they did last week? And what's their stats and throwing it? It's really no different. It's just a different topic. So again, I bring it back to which is normal. But you notice it doesn't stop Sheldon from enjoying the movie, even though there's inaccuracies, even though scientifically it's not fun. He just wants to watch Superman, enjoy Superman, and go watch the marathon. I've said this before also. Too many people get hung up on things like that's not scientifically accurate. And then they hate the franchise, hate the movie, whatever, and say it's this, that, and the other thing. It should be banned and etc. It's a movie. It's entertainment. It's fun. Not every movie is a documentary. Okay. If it's a fantasy, if it's a written story, enjoy it. It doesn't have to be scientifically accurate. So the question though is, do people really do this? I think I've answered that. Yeah, because it's a fun exercise. Wait till we get to the part later where the girls are reading comics. That's a fun one. The real problem with this scene is believing that Leonard has 2,600 comics hidden somewhere in his small apartment and we never have seen them. 2,600 comics takes up a lot of long boxes, and there's nowhere we've ever seen that in his room in the apartment. So I don't believe that he actually has that many.
I guess we'll just bring it up ourselves.
I hardly think so.
Why not?
Well, we don't have a dolly or lifting belts or any measurable upper body strength.
We don't need strength. We're physicists. We are the intellectual descendants of Archimedes. Give me a fulcrum and a lever and I can move the earth. It's just a matter. I don't have this. I don't have this. I do not have this.
Archimedes would be so proud.
So then Penny's furniture is delivered, and I love how hopeful Leonard is here. He's always, yeah, we can do this. And Sheldon, yeah, have you looked at the science behind this? And he explains the formula that's needed to move the furniture. It's not completely accurate, but that's fine. That's not the focus here. The science does get better throughout the series because they realize how important it really is. And I think we've all struggled at times to move something like this. Like trying to open the doors in the first episode, they try to apply science to it. And again, it really, reality sinks in. They fall short of this. They're just not, let's move this and be done with it. They've probably not moved things like this before. And once again, when Sheldon brings up sex, he says sexual congress, which is another term, accurate, but it comes across as funny because that's not how people talk. But it also gets past the censors and it's much more accurate and acceptable, I would say. And a few times at the beginning, in the beginning of the series, it does feel forced to use the big words, but again, they grow into it.
We heard, great, Caesar's ghost, look at this place.
Once they get in the apartment, Sheldon's OCD kicks in. He can't stand it to be that messy and it bothers him. This is Penny's apartment and she's a slob. Now, they change this a bit too. She's never this much of a slob later, though she's never as tidy as Sheldon. And so most of you may be saying, so what? It's her apartment. Yes, you're right. Absolutely. And that's what Leonard tries to do. But Sheldon is on the spectrum and the tidiness is one of his quirks. And it drives him crazy knowing that the apartment is not clean, that it's a mess. And he even says it, it's my bedroom is adjacent to our hallway, which is adjacent to the living room, which is adjacent to the door, which leads to the hallway between our apartments, which is right next to this dirty apartment. So to him in his brain, oh my God, that's the same thing as being in my apartment. And we all recognize how ridiculous that does sound. But again, that's how his mind works, how it thinks. He's stuck on that. He can't get out of it now. So again, not everybody that's neurodivergent is like this. If you watched Monk, it's the same type of thing. It's another example with him, and it's a fun one too to watch. And we all probably recognize somebody that we know that is like this, that does this, that lines their pencils up on the desk or make sure all the papers are neat on their desk or their books are all lined up on the shelf, something. A lot of people have some touch of OCD about something. They may be a big slob and leave dirty dishes, but their socks are rolled up in lines, rows, something. And I think Sheldon does answer truthfully when Leonard asks if he recognizes that not everyone has the compulsive need to organize the world. Sheldon's answer is no. And he probably does have a hard time understanding that because the reality in his world is it needs to be organized. So I don't know anyone that sorts their breakfast cereal by fiber content like Sheldon. This is the next day they're talking in the kitchen, but I love how that makes sense to him. Others might need to have them alphabetized and others might need to group them by company. But note that once their brain decides this is the way to do it, nothing will convince them to do it differently. Nothing else makes sense, even though different divergent brains with OCD will sort them differently. That's just how it works. It's not like everybody on the spectrum, neurodivergent brains agrees that cereal should be done by fiber content. They all have a thing, and that's how they do it. Let me just say that I did know somebody once that was a slob, couldn't pick up dirty clothes, couldn't do dishes, total just one path to the bed type thing. But they had about 4,000 crayons that had to be organized by shades of color, or they would stay up all night to organize crayons. And they had tons and tons. It looked like a Pantone chart when you looked at it. And that same person had to put books on a bookshelf by color. Now, they once organized my programming and development computer books by color, and that did not last long once I saw it. Yeah, it looked great. All the red, all the blues, all the yellows, whatever. But the problem is, that's not how I look up computer development and programming books. I need C#, Python, and PHP or whatever it is, MySQL. I need all those books together, not by color. That's just an example that how brains are different. And one of my favorite lines in the show this time is the swirling vortex of entropy. I might put that on a t-shirt, so take a look if you see it. I think that's just a neat thing. I need to figure out exactly what swirling vortex of entropy would be on the shirt.
Sheldon? Hello?
Next, I know that Leonard knows, then it goes to be night. Leonard hears a noise. He comes out. And I know he knows that he's not carrying a real lightsaber, but it makes him feel better. And I love that's their weapon of choice. They don't have a gun. They don't even have baseball bats. They have a lightsaber, and it glows. It serves function. He can see with it, and he can beat somebody with it. But I would almost guarantee he'd hesitate to hit somebody with it because he wouldn't want to break it. It's his collector lightsaber. And then they're in Penny's apartment arguing, and he explains why he's doing it. And Leonard says that if she wakes up, they won't have a reasonable explanation. And Sheldon says, I just gave you a reasonable explanation. It's disorganized. It's right next to our apartment. We need to organize it. Again, to him, that makes sense, that it is a reasonable explanation, though in the reality of the world, that is not an explanation. I'm going to use that, the reality of the world. Leonard says, he retorts with, that was an explanation, and he puts it over the top by implying the reasonableness will be determined by a jury of their peers. That's fantastic. I love that line. This becomes common between them, Leonard pushing to get Sheldon to quit acting in a way that everyone else sees as a bit crazy. But we know to Sheldon it's not crazy. It's logical and is just something he has to do because of his internal wiring. But it also shows Sheldon's ego when he states he doesn't have any peers. So that comes with it too. A lot of smart people have that neurodivergence, that spectrum quirkiness. So it goes hand in hand quite often. Then the fun fact of the night about speaking in a lower register so as not to wake Penny. There are times when you wonder if these facts Sheldon comes up with are really facts. It is shown that women are more sensitive to high-pitched noises than men. He may have extrapolated that bit of information, but women are more sensitive. The next morning, we get our first taste of Sheldon not being able to tell when someone is sarcastic. And this is probably one of the better little jokes in this episode compared to the rest of the sarcastic later. He's just not getting it. Leonard's trying to explain it to him. It does come into play later, but I think this is the more funny one out of all of them. And even in the face of Penny's anger, Sheldon can't stop with the facts about her snoring and sleep apnea. He's trying to help her. He's not concerned, but more, this is just how it is. Let me tell you how to fix it, what it should be, that type of thing. For the same reason he doesn't get sarcasm, the anger really doesn't affect him. And she's mad, and Leonard gets it, but Sheldon, no.
And snoring. And that's probably just a sinus infection. But it could be sleep apnea. You might want to see an otolaryngologist. The throat doctor.
And what kind of doctor removes shoes from asses?
Depending on the depth, that's either a proctologist or a general surgeon.
So then sorry. Okay. Then the sarcasm sign that Leonard holds up. And I know some people that would love to use that sometimes. They know people that would be helpful. And I'll tell you, if I wasn't getting somebody's sarcasm and somebody held up a sign behind them to say sarcasm, that would be helpful. There are times I don't get social cues. There are times I don't understand other people, that what they're saying and why, and it just confounds me. So having people, maybe hiring people to follow you to write signs and explain social cues, that would be awesome, actually. All right, you got to love Sheldon. He asks her if she's mad. He asked her, is she mad because they were in the apartment or mad because they organized it? Because that wasn't clear. If it's not clear, which one are you upset about? He uses some big words, and to him, this is important. And her anger at them, it is a big deal and something he really doesn't understand, so he dismisses it. But is she upset because they were in the apartment or that they organized it? Because he'd be offended if it was because they organized it. And I've been there. I know a particularly emotional woman that this was a problem between us at times. Emotion and logic clash because it's difficult to understand the other side. And I don't know what to do about that at times, obviously.
What?
I am truly sorry for what happened last night. I take full responsibility. And I hope that it won't color your opinion of Leonard, who is not only a wonderful guy, but also, I hear, a gentle and thorough lover.
All right. And even when Sheldon tries, he still steps over that normalcy line. He wants to help, but he doesn't get how saying that Leonard is a sensitive lover is inappropriate, which is very funny. He thinks he's helping Leonard and telling Penny this stuff, and Leonard's dying. And you'll notice when Sheldon knocks on Penny's door, he doesn't knock 3 times. That joke comes about later.
Weird as
Oh, she's standing very close to me. Oh my, she does smell good. What is that? Vanilla?
strangers. Well, I mean, where I come from, if someone comes into your house at night, you shoot, okay? And you don't shoot to wound. I mean, all right, my sister shot her husband, but it was an accident. They were drunk. What was I saying?
She's so chatty.
So then Penny traps Raj in the hallway and we hear his thoughts. Confession. This happens to me a lot. She's talking, blah, 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 blah. And his brain's going, oh, she smells good. Oh, I'm very close to her. And not even listening to what she's saying. And he's, oh, I should nod right now. Sometimes your brain gets going and it totally blocks out the real world. It really does. I've solved database problems I've been having by going for a drive. And I'm driving along and my brain starts thinking of the database problem. Unfortunately, the problem is it doesn't always see the road anymore. And I've actually meant to get off in one city, ended up in another city because I was thinking about stuff and just kept driving like an autopilot. So not necessarily the most safe thing to do, but that's how the brain works sometimes. I have been told that it's like I have multiple browser tabs open at once in my brain, a lot of them. And I know there's other people watching this that understand that. And we'll just skip over the part about Raj's reaction to the hug. Nerds, you probably get that, especially the first time you were getting girls to hug you. And then we get to the first inkling of a possibility of other than friendship between Raj and Howard. And I know this is meant to be funny, but it is a little bit insulting because they're saying they're nerds, they might be gay. It's inserting the nerds and gay guys. This does continue later and they really play it up, but there are times it is funnier. This exchange just came across to me a little uncomfortable and not as funny. So,
Penny, just as Oppenheimer came to regret his contributions to the first atomic bomb, so too I regret my participation in what was, at the very least, an error in judgment. The hallmark of the great human experiment is the willingness to recognize one's mistakes. Some mistakes, such as Madame Curie's discovery of radium, turned out to have great scientific potential, even though she would later die a slow, painful death from radiation poisoning.
then when Leonard goes to apologize, he still has to nerd it up. I love that he writes out the apology. And that's how the neurodivergent brain operates. Want to make sure you say everything, get it all down. It's much easier to write it. And so even when she confronts him, he has to read it off of there. And it's the most logical thing for him to do. Read what's there rather than just trying to talk. And most people wouldn't apologize by quoting Oppenheimer and the atomic bomb and talking about Marie Curie dying from radiation poisoning. That's probably not where you go with an apology. But again, it made sense to Leonard. It made him feel more comfortable talking about that. And then I know at least 4 people that, Leonard, he gets hugged by Penny and he goes back to the door. I know at least 4 people that would tell you that if I were in the same situation being hugged by a pretty girl, I'd probably be distracted enough to run into a door also. And then at the end, they're all helping Penny set up her IKEA media center, right? Their brains start ticking and they come up with improvements. And this isn't the most efficient and logical way to build this thing. So let's make it better. And they go off to make it even better. And shall I say, I've been there and done that. Not uncommon, a little overboard for the humor effect, but not uncommon, trying to improve it and make it better from what they have. And we also see Howard being condescending toward her, something that does happen with him. I think it's not a neurodivergent thing, but more his growing up environment with his mother. I also think they were trying to make it funny that he was trying to act like a real man, being nerdy. So that's another one of those in this episode that doesn't really reflect the guys and the show. And I think it changes a bit later. And then when she says she's going to take off her clothes and they don't react, remember those tabs in the brain that I mentioned? Yeah, okay. So once you get focused on a problem like this, it's very difficult to stop the thinking. I'm not saying her taking off her clothes wouldn't distract me. Okay, I probably would, but guaranteed somewhere in the back of my head, my brain would still be trying to solve the problem. So there we go. Episode 2 of the Big Bang Theory, neurodivergence analysis, neurodivergence spectrum analysis. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you'll come back and we'll talk about episode 3 next time. Thank you.